Well, hello, ladies, gentlemen, and everyone in between. I am Diana Clary and the Lavender Lady. How the heck are ya? This is Coffee with Lavender, and we have today a question. One that's been on my mind all over the place, and one that's been batted about the Twitterverse and everywhere else on the internet that I can think of that I've seen. And that is basically, are you transphobic because you would rather not date a trans person? And the one thing about this is that I'd really, really not want to stop with a simple yes or no or screw you. Um, but I'd really like to dissect that question. There's got to be more to it than a simple yes or no. And to that effect, um, I've assembled a small panel of very knowledgeable people, and we might as well bring them on. We've got with us Jen Morgan from my days back in movie night, and I think you've been on the show once or twice. Have you
Mm-hmm.
not, Jen? And
Yes.
Triatial we have with us, who is
Hey.
not unknown to this particular show. And we have someone new. We have Dottie with us, who happened to answer my casting call, and glad to have you on. And this is a good thing going on here. Um, okay, to start off, I can kind of see two sides to this. There is that matter of preference. Okay, let's look at it this way. I would much rather date somebody of my own intellectual capacity or greater. I don't think I could see myself dating someone with an IQ below room temperature. In other words, most answers. Um, is that a preference? Or am I discriminating against that group of people that I'm leaving out of the dating pool, even though it would probably drive me crazy if I had to spend any great amount of time around them? And then, too, there are some people who would probably prefer to live in a neighborhood or a country or a world filled with people that look like them and no one else. But I think most civilized people have since decided that that's not necessarily the greatest position to take. So, is this where a preference crosses the line into discrimination? Now, how does that work with, say, dating a pre op trans person like nobody I know? Let's open this up. What do you guys think about this?
I thought we were talking about electronics. You said something about input and output jacks. I'm confused.
Yeah, that's the way that works.
I- For me, it's so hard to break it down into like a yes or a no. There's so many factors that you have to throw in there. Like you said earlier about like there's a certain level of intelligence that you would prefer to have. There are just some things when you're looking at dating, not talking about actually getting into the relationship, but your starting out points where you have to look at, am I going to actually be happy with this person? And if there are any reasons that, are going to make, if there are any things that are going to make things difficult in the relationship, can we actually work them out? Because you can't, going into a relationship where you're just going to be miserable is not good or healthy for either of you.
Mm hmm.
Um, and I think that though that has to be taken into into whether or not you're questioning whether or not something is wrong. Another thing that you have to do that a lot of times we don't think about is there are societal influences that we have as a society that may impact your decision. And it's good to self reflect and see, is this something that I need, or is this something that I've been led to believe that I need as well? Um, Especially talking about in your case, you want somebody intelligent. Well, are you going to really be happy with somebody that you can't have a conversation with long term?
It's happened that I have not been happy with such a person more than once. And that's a problem that you have when you run into someone's arms simply because you're lonely. But that's grist for another mill. That's topic for
Yeah.
another show. But yeah, it's happened, definitely. And okay, continue. Yeah, I don't want to interrupt that much. That
No,
much.
I like I said, from me, my preferences generally are I want somebody who's happy in a sexless relationship. If they have sexual needs, I'm not going to be able to fulfill them. I'm not. That's not going to happen. Um, and sometimes I wonder if I even really have so much romantic needs because I am somewhere on the aromantic spectrum as well.
Okay.
Um, and sometimes I don't feel romantic at all for really long periods of time. I've had relationships where I didn't mind doing the romantic stuff, but it wasn't an actual real big desire for me. So, uh, as far as the romantic aspects of a relationship, that I can do with or do without. It doesn't really matter. Unfortunately, that means that a good percentage of the population would not be happy in a relationship with me at all.
Okay, then.
How it is.
Just a quick one. Hi, Kate. Good morning. How are you?
Sleepy.
Oh, am I going to have to move the show a little later? Is that the way it's going to have to work?
Well, you don't have to do it on my account, but it would help me like not need that much more coffee injected directly into a vein.
Yeah, okay, 6 p.m. it is. No, I had asked you if you wanted in on this because yours is an opinion I very much respect. And
Yeah.
oh yeah, no,
Um
no,
well, I
I'm
mean,
not giving
I
you shit here, really. And I know that you do have an opinion as far as this stuff goes.
And there's
yeah,
no other
and
possible choice.
it's
Reason you got her.
not an opinion that I'm necessarily proud of or can even logically support, which makes me reluctant to even say it. Because it is 100% emotional, my like visceral,
Hmm.
my opinion on this one. And I mean, like a lot of people, I try to be attracted to someone's personality, to their brain, to who they are more than what they are. But the fact is that there are legitimate material things to take into consideration. And I'm sorry, but penises are creepy. And so, even if I were to fall for a pre op male to female transgender person, I would have a very difficult time getting past that part. And
Hmm.
I know that that's kind of a horrible thing in some ways, but at the same time, let's face it, that is a factor that needs to be considered. And
And
like,
yeah,
yeah,
my feeling exactly is we've got to cover all the bases here. It's not a simple yes. It's not a simple no. And I know that we're going to have people on our asses, well, mine anyway, at least I hope they can confine it to me, uh, over whatever we have to say here. But as I said when we were opening the program, I think the question needs to be dissected more than any specific answer needs to be given.
Yeah, I mean, I know a lot of people will treat this issue almost the way they treat race, where they
Well,
say, "Oh, was that person black? I don't notice that sort of thing," and I'm pretty sure they do, even if they treat it as a non-issue. And I'm sure that people express a very similar sentiment. Oh, your genitals are this; it doesn't matter in the slightest. Well, in a purely social context, you're right. But when we're starting to talk about romantic relationships, let's face it, there's going to be some sexual component to most romantic relationships as well. And it's going to make a difference. And to
yeah,
deny that is to lie to yourself and also to anyone you might date who doesn't realize what feelings you're harboring.
yeah,
In the chat, I think there's a couple of things I want to bring up for the chat.
sure.
I'm watching what they're saying and stuff. First of all, when we're talking about this, I think the very basic thing to cover is that we're not just talking about male to female transgender folks. We're
Right,
talking about female
absolutely,
to male as well.
absolutely, yes.
Well,
Okay,
true. But
there's
I
a
mean,
lot of folks with that. So
my,
now,
my my opinion was asked, and I'm a lesbian, so that's why I addressed it that way. But go on.
Yeah, I understand
okay,
completely. Yeah.
okay, now is that person because they have, and I'm not so much trying to challenge your feelings, Kate, but just to explore the parameters of what we're talking about. Is that person because their genitals are what you have your preference for? Is that person somebody that you might date?
Sorry, rewind.
The
Which person specifically can you be?
the female to male transgender person.
Well, I mean, that's the thing, is probably not, just because uh, if they act masculine because that's who they are, I'm not particularly attracted to that either. Um, so I mean, there are multiple factors here,
Yeah.
and we cannot treat them as separate. And um, and also there's a very good chance that I don't know what female to male surgery ends up producing in the end, but chances are good they might want it. And so then we're dealing again with a masculine mind and now a masculine body, and that's 100% not what I want.
Yeah, and let me say that, let's also be honest, it does hurt when one is excluded from the pool based on something over which they have absolutely no control.
Mm.
And I mean, it's happened to me more than once, for example. And you begin to wonder if you're desirable to anyone at all simply because you did what you thought you had to do in the process of life. But that's I'm trying not to make it personal. I want to include everybody on this sort of thing. So that's just
One of the
one
things,
example of what's going on. I'm sure
one of
that
the
many
things,
others feel that way as well.
one of the things I find fascinating in the um, transsexual community is the numerous. I was shocked at the first one I ran into, but now it's apparent to me that there are numerous situations where there's a married couple and one of the partners declares transsexual and goes through the complete procedure all the way through surgery, and they're still together. And it's like, oh, what a concept. The first one, like I said, I heard of way back 30 some years ago, blew me away.
Yeah, the
But now
first
it's like I say, it's apparent that it happens much more often than I ever thought.
the first one I'd ever heard about was some 30 some years ago. It was via a documentary by the name of What's XMI, and the originally masculine half of the couple transitioned, and the female half of the couple said, "I am too old to be in the dating pool. I don't need to go through all that garbage. I'm just going to stay here." The comfort factor, if you will. She knew Jody, and that's what she decided. It was just, at one point she said it's different, but it kind of works, and whether she was telling the truth or not for the camera is another story. But it seemed, but that's another.
Well, one of the things that I wondered about way back when, that now, at that time, this couple were clients of mine. I was in the mental health business, and they were clients in a transgender therapy group that I was conducting, and I didn't have them long enough to find out how it matured as time went on. But there's also the dynamic that people may not be thinking of in the chat, or the population in general, that when a male goes on hormone replacement therapy, their penis and testicles change quite a bit as far as their ability to function.
Oh, do they ever?
To a certain degree, their appearance,
Oh yeah,
their size, and so this isn't the typical porn image or Hollywood image even of some woman who appears to be female in every aspect until you take down their skirt or pants and they have this big raging boner. It just
yeah. No, that is not real. It's amazing though how many people think it is.
Okay, so now we go back to the marriage question.
Mm-hmm.
That these people were able to stay together. Like I said, I did not see how this completely matured in their particular situation. But what about the sexuality, or the intimacy, is a better word, between these people? How did it change? How did it affect the emotional bonding and the overall fidelity of the relationship? Did they ultimately stay together?
Yeah, and I've never heard really anybody ever go into detail about that, which would be a fascinating subject to explore, especially if the folks involved could be, if they could feel the ability to be honest completely, and not try to hide anything from the camera, if you will, for fear of discomfort, etc. Yeah.
There is something I'd like to clarify about my position, because you guys brought something up that I hadn't even considered.
Sure.
Is if I was in a relationship with a woman, or what I thought was a woman, who turns out to be female to male, but was in the lesbian dating scene because, well, they kind of thought they had to be or whatever, social pressure and all that, and like tells me about it after we're really invested in a relationship, I don't know what I would do then. I really don't, because I've known a few couples who've fallen for each other and been together for years, and then one of them comes out as trans, and I've seen on both sides of the spectrum, either we stay together or we get divorced or whatever. I don't know what I would do if that was sprung on me when I was like invested in a relationship. I really don't know what I would do. And
Now,
that's a question I need to ponder, I think.
When you're saying that, are you presuming the person has gone through bottom surgery or not?
No. I'm saying that they haven't even started a transition when we get together. Like they haven't even come out yet. And so they haven't even started hormones at all.
I see.
Right?
Okay.
Like they're starting 100% fresh, but we've been in a relationship. I don't know what I would do.
And I think that's a perfectly fair question.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've actually put some thought into that. Not a ton, because the question hadn't really been on my mind until it was brought up on Twitter. But I'm like, you know what? It's so hard with it being so hard for me to get, as Kate put it, emotionally invested. If my partner decided that, hey, I need to transition to be more myself and to have a better life, I'd be on board, because it is so difficult for me to develop romantic attachments. It's extremely difficult. And if we were already all in, whatever they need, whatever I definitely have to adjust, but I'd be in for it.
Now, is the situation any different for you or for any other ace because you are ace? Because those pants aren't coming down, basically.
Yeah, pretty much my genital preference is genitals are nice, but like put that thing back where it came from, or so help me. But also it I can't speak for sex positive aces because I am not sex positive or sex neutral. I'm a full.
That's a new term to me. What does that mean?
Okay, there's different there asexuality is a spectrum. There are sex repulsed aces, people who don't particularly like sex. There are sex neutral aces who don't really care about sex but may have sex if it's important to their partner. And there are sex positive aces who once they've formed whatever romantic attachments or whatever, or actually have a sex drive that they basically don't really they enjoy sex, they have fun with sex, it's something that's for them. I fall in the camp of sex repulsed. I very occasionally like sex, but pretty much for me, every few years I have a desire for it, which goes away on its own after about a week.
What are we talking, Pon Far here or what?
No, no, it's pretty much, oh, okay, that looks like fun, except no, I know it's not for me. Like, and
So,
then I
Yeah.
just ignore it, it goes away on its own.
This is something.
I guess my question has to be: if you're attracted to Fonzie, are you an asexual?
Oh god.
Oh, jeez. Oh, man.
No,
No,
he's
but
definitely B-roll.
Okay, honestly, I've heard worse jokes though, so at least But
the,
no, then that's the thing is, as somebody who dislikes sex itself, and somebody who, and again, I said I'm kind of on the aromantic spectrum too. So if I have romantic feelings for somebody and I am compatible with them, and we build up a relationship, and the person decides that they need to transition, I mean, we've already built up a relationship and sex isn't even a factor. So for me, that's a simple I stay on board.
It wouldn't matter because I mean, most of the time it's the genitalia, right? And if you were doing like actual intimacy, then it wouldn't be that much of an issue, especially if you
Yeah.
already really love the person. And as for that, it's not just disliking sex, but I mean, like, you're just not sexually attracted. So, like, if you're not attracted to someone, like, you can't just be specifically attracted to people just because of their gender. It's a little more than that. It's personality. It might be even their swag or something else.
Yeah.
So, like, it's not even gender. It's certain qualities about people that you're attracted to.
Yeah. And like, I thought that my leanings were even when I do feel attraction, I thought that they were more hetero inclined. But the thing is that I was trained to think that there was no other sexuality other than being hetero.
I've been the
And
same way, and it was even like then there was homosexuality, and then there was bisexuality, and I was like, "There's something missing here because I don't fit in any of these." You know?
yeah, and I've thought about, like, basically it's like, well, I was trained to think that way. Would I actually go outside of that? And I was like, yeah, if I actually felt some kind of attraction, I would go for it at this point because that is so damn rare for me.
Yeah, exactly.
I typically don't feel attraction about once every 7 years. And I'm not
So
even
yeah,
joking.
Pon Far.
yeah. Oh, my.
I
It's.
think that's on a 7-year cycle.
I'm pretty sure.
My Trek lore is not the best, but I'm pretty sure Pon Far is 7 years.
I'm pretty sure it is, yes.
Yeah, but the thing is that Vulcans can't ignore theirs. I kind of can because it's usually not that deep. Except, well, the romantic one is deep, but like I said, the sexual desire is actually easily ignorable. Like I can just go along my day and it not really bother me. It's there and then it goes away on its own.
Now, something I've noticed in
Yeah.
my own experience. Well, here I come inserting me into the conversation again. But um, I call myself lesbian. I am mostly, I would say, 98, 99, 99.5% gynophilic. I like girls. Uh,
Yeah.
However, there has been that very, very rare occasion where some gentleman catches my attention. Um, in most of those cases, I think, okay, could I manage a physical relationship with this person? And I'm thinking, and I don't know as much as I might want to consider something like that if the two of us actually had anything going on. And then there was that one case in which it was, yeah, I'm all on board. Um, so, yeah, there is a
Yeah.
bit of a spectrum going on there. And I think it very much depends on the individual. There got to be some other considerations going on. And, well, of course,
Yeah.
with the depending on the individual, when you're talking about old, fat, and ugly over here, it's another story entirely. But
Not ugly.
Well,
I know
why.
what you mean about there being that one exception.
okay,
Because as weird as it's probably going to sound, because I'm probably even 99 point lots more nines than you said,
okay,
gynophilic.
okay,
There was that one actor that I remember from the 90s that for some reason my brain said, huh,
Yeah.
huh. So, yeah.
I
mm,
had that one occasion with a lady. She was staff of like the YMCA, and like she had this sweetest voice, and I was like, "Oh my god, that's kind of cute." And I was just like totally crushing on her because she was really sweet in that. But as for a long-term relationship, I thought about it, and it's like, no, I wouldn't be able to go any further than that. You know, so it's
okay
like you
then,
could be attracted, but like how far would you go?
yeah. Well, with
Like we
me,
get
Since
boys.
since we're having true confessions,
sure.
and I'm the only one who hasn't stated preferences here, I suppose it's my turn. Um, I'm post-op. For those of you who don't know me in the chat, um, decades ago, I am only attracted to women in terms of who I would be willing to have a relationship with. But there are absolutely men who make me just want to go, oh. And I've realized actually only recently as I've tried very hard to understand it. It's a daddy complex. There's just a bunch of guys that I've met
Huh.
over my years who are just so warm and friendly and kind and supportive that I just want to take a nap on their shoulder,
Yeah,
and I just
that's
admire
what I
them
like
as
about some
people.
people. Yeah,
Um, but then I tried to explore it further and visualize what about a sexual encounter with this person, and we get to the pants drop and it just gee.
Okay then,
right.
okay.
Yeah,
And now I've turned to other transgender folks in this conversation that I'm not a transphobic is that I've spent decades of my life and over $100,000 to not have a penis in my life. I'm not going to start now. You know?
yeah. Fair point. Yeah,
Oh my.
But the real issue in the community is whether it comes down what it comes down to is there's a lot of people who are saying, who are transgender themselves, who are saying that, well, if you feel that way, that means that you could never date a trans woman who is preoperative. And I think, well, if they're preoperative and bottom surgery is eventually something that they're trying to achieve, but medical reasons, financial reasons, that kind of stuff prevents them at this time. Yeah, I could date them. I could date them. Could I have sex with them? I don't know. We'd have to negotiate that out, and I've never experienced that, so I would have to work it out just like anyone else.
and
But
everybody's different too, right? Like you can't just
mhm.
say, oh, I want this, this, and that. I mean, you got to go, well, let's try this first.
Mm.
But then if I'm asked, would you date a trans woman who's post operative? Absolutely.
Yeah.
It would be hypocritical for me not to, first of all. But
Well, there are a lot of
I don't.
hypocrites out there, let me tell you.
um, it, it,
Yeah.
if they're attractive to me, they're attractive to me. That's what it comes down to,
Yeah.
and that's it. But the genitals, I think, are a very valid situation people are put in, and it's you can't be said that you're bad because you are not attracted to something. I
Yeah.
don't like big hairy freaking spiders. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Small pretty cute ones like those little guys that flap their legs. They're real tiny. They're cute as a bug's ear. But
Hmm.
doesn't mean I hate all spiders.
And that's, I think, the main thrust, if you will excuse the expression, of this whole show is, where is the line, if there is one? Where is that line crossed where a preference, which I think we've established pretty much does exist, when does that become a bigotry or something like that? And I don't know. I don't know
I
if it
would,
happens at all.
I suspect it's when you start mistreating people for
yeah.
it, maligning them behind their back or to their face, or starting with violence or any of that. That's when it starts to become a bigotry. I think, I mean, because there are certain categories of things in my head where I'm like, but I keep it to myself because it does nobody any good to act on it, and certainly doesn't do anyone any good to express it or to treat anyone differently because of it. Even though there are a few things in my head where I'm like, I don't like that very much, you know. Um, so I mean, I think action makes it bigotry more than just the thought.
Okay.
I think also when you're targeting a group of people with the same attribute, then it's really bigotry. Because, I mean, then you're hate mongering a group of people or a certain part of people. So, there's certain lines to be crossed, and I think it varies. But, I mean, if you're talking in a relationship sense, the boundary to cross would be if you're insulting the person for having it or not changing themselves for you just because you don't like it.
Yeah.
If that's the problem, then that needs to be up to your partner's choice. Then just move on if it's not working.
What would you say in my situation where I would date a trans woman who is pre-op if I knew that bottom surgery was something that she's looking to achieve at some point. We get
Well, that
involved and we're fully invested, and then she says, "I've changed my mind about that part." What if I
okay.
were what
Well,
if I were to feel I don't want to be with you anymore then?
see, that would be a little bit more complicated because then you would probably discuss like, okay, what do we do about this then? If it's a problem, maybe you would still end up staying with the relationship because you love that person, but it'd be very difficult if you want intimacy. So that could be maybe an issue with the relationship.
Yeah, and this is, I guess, something that's on an individual basis again.
Yes.
Something I alluded to earlier. There are a pretty fair number of us who do hurt because of this, and I think that drives part of it as well. When you sit there and you think, okay, I'm going to spend the rest of my life alone because I am unattractive to a large number of people, and I think that may drive some of it. The whole transphobic issue may be a knee jerk reaction. I don't know. What do you guys have anything to say about that?
I
I,
think
I, I I'm sorry. Go ahead.
okay. I think in my experience, now not because I'm trans or I've dated a trans person, but I had a really wonderful boyfriend that I met. He lives in Denmark,
Hmm.
and I live in Canada. So I visited him for a couple months, And it was great. It was wonderful. There was some issues, of course, but that's normal with a relationship. But we can't be together because of immigration issues, and he's on social assistance, so he couldn't get over here. So it hurts not to have him, around. But like, what do I do? It's a problem with not being able to stay with that person, right?
Okay,
It still hurts, but it's a healing process too after.
That's sad. I'm sorry for you going through that.
And it's hard for me to find another person because I'm very, very picky about who I date, right? So
Tell me about being picky.
Well, something else that I wanted to bring up that we haven't said
Okay.
is there are people out there who, no matter the genitals, no matter anything else, will not date a trans person just because they're trans.
And that's
And I
transphobia.
That's a
do
problem.
yeah,
And I do think that itself is a problem. Is not necessarily because I don't think we should throw genital preference out the window. But if you
Right.
meet a non-binary person or you meet somebody who has the general physical attributes that you like, but you won't date them at all because they're trans, just because they're trans and you've already thrown that possibility out of the window, that is a problem.
That is a big, big problem, and this is where
yeah,
a lot of people fly stealth. Look at Lynn Conway, someone who hid the fact that she was trans for decades. She felt she had to because she had so much to lose if it came out. And the only reason she did finally come out was somebody was doing a retrospective on the career of the person who invented a certain chip architecture, computer chip architecture. That person happened to be Lynn Conway before she transitioned. So she, this may come out, and I think I'm going to have to add that off at the pass. And happily, it worked out well enough for her. But yeah, you've got that whole thing where there are people who absolutely need to fly stealth because they've got so much to lose.
well, and then there was that whole story behind Alan Turing. He was
Yeah,
basically sentenced to
Wait.
jail and tortured for being gay.
yeah,
Oh, that part. Okay.
Yeah, no, he was part of the World War One, I think, or World War Two.
World War
For,
II. He
yeah,
helped
he
break
crypted
the Enigma code.
Enigma code, yeah, from the Germans.
Yeah.
When you said that, I was like, I knew he was gay, but I was like, was he trans still? I was like wondering
no,
how this related, and then okay, no.
No, I was talking in general because people are afraid to come out because of things like that in history, right?
Yeah.
And it's still like how are people going to react? What's going to happen to my job? And there are people that don't bother changing anything. They try and blend in. They just go with everything.
In a way, I have been pretty lucky in the sense that I don't have that much to lose because I don't have that much. So that's actually a good thing in its own way. But there are some.
I have a job. I have a good job with a good company, and I've been very open with them at the start, and they're willing to accept me. But that's sometimes rare with companies.
Mm-hmm.
They got all kinds of benefits for me, and they said, "Okay, we can set you up with all these extra benefits because you're going to transition." I'm like, sweet. So I get like this extra benefit of 2 weeks off for transitional surgery if I want, and it doesn't cut into anything else like sick time or anything.
Nice, very, very nice.
So there's some companies that are very accepting.
Dottie, I didn't realize you were trans.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I'm non-binary. I'm gonna get like top surgery eventually.
So hexadecimal then.
There are many, many reasons. Okay, yeah.
Every time someone says that they're non-binary, that goes through my head every time. Can't help it. This is actually one of the few times I've said it.
Oh my, oh my, and it's
I
really
actually love
interesting
reboot.
because in 98% of the cases, anyone who has snagged me has done it on the basis of the brain. Yes, I have run into someone's arms a couple of times simply because I was lonely. That went.
Yeah.
Yeah,
um,
but that
My
happens with
problem is I
everybody.
keep falling in love and having crushes on straight women.
Yeah,
okay.
that doesn't help. I've been there too. That really doesn't.
Oh,
Boy, no kidding.
Some of them are really pretty, I must admit.
I keep falling for the allosexuals, the people who are not on the asexual spectrum, and it kills me. That's why I ignore a lot of my romantic leanings, because
Hmm.
I know that they would not be happy in a non-sexual relationship. And it's usually somebody I know well enough to know that they would not be able to handle it.
Right.
Because I am demi-romantic with a side of romantic, fray romantic, which is basically after a while, my romantic attraction just completely drops off a cliff.
Huh.
Um, all of a sudden, and suddenly, no warning, just like all of a sudden, I'm not romantically attracted to said person anymore.
That could be a bit of a
So,
problem, yeah.
well, and like I still love the person and I want a relationship with them, but it just goes from like romantic when it's shiny and new to like moving into more of a platonic thing of where like I still love the person, they're still my partner, but a lot of people see that and they're like, "Well, you're not romantically attracted to me anymore. I don't understand why you want this relationship." It's like, "No, I still deeply love you and want you as my partner, but I my desire has changed and I'm happy enough to go along with anything romantic you want to do, but it's not a desire or necessary for me at this point." And unfortunately, that is an added complication as well.
Try, may I ask a question?
Go ahead.
It as an ace, if you were able to, this is hypothetical, if you were able to be assured that any relationship you were going to develop was going to remain asexual, um, does one gender or the other preclude being willing to get involved with someone?
I don't think so at this point. Because honestly, like if I develop those feelings and I feel like somebody is compatible with me in all and the respects that I need, and when I say compatible, I mean like your personality, your intelligence, like whether or not you like sex, what are your goals, like long-term goals, and they match up enough to where we're compatible. I don't think gender's gonna play with that in me with me. I don't
Hmm.
anymore because I'm just like at this point that is so rare that like I would hop on that opportunity if that were to
Okay.
occur.
Yeah.
Now, again, with myself, one thing I've noticed is, well, a couple of things I've noticed. One of them is personality wise, I don't do well with most guys. As I said, there have been the exceptions. Um, and the one thing I have noticed is that there is a physical element going on here. I don't like the way most men smell. It's not an aroma thing, it's not aromatic. I think it's more pheromonal,
Yeah.
where it's something you can't describe as, the smell of burnished leather or anything like that. It's just something that doesn't work. And, Eris knows I've tried, okay? And for the most part, that stuff, it's the rare guy who doesn't elicit that aversion in me. So, again, I do get it. It's just hard to take sometimes.
It's funny, like most of the guys with whom I've developed any kind of close relationship was more of like a sort of brother sister thing. Like the guys I find myself spending the most time with, even if they're younger than me, give off a big brother vibe.
Okay, then.
And so that's the way I grow attached to any like outwardly expressing males.
Hmm.
I think that's weird in a way, but totally healthy too. I don't know.
No, that's
Hmm.
actually pretty good guys, and you got like a friend or something, but like a bigger friend. I think like oh, sorry, I lost my train of thought. No,
Like,
actually, I
Must
got
be
it.
Amtrak.
On the pheromone side of things, what you were talking about, I get you. Like when I was a teenager going through puberty, I was really attracted to guys who were hypersexual, who gave off that pheromone. So I know where you're coming with that. I noticed it more as a teenager, but now I don't. I don't notice it anymore.
Yeah, well, when I was a teenager and well, even into my 30s, I had such a high sex drive, it got me into some trouble. I mean, it ruined a marriage that way. Um,
Yeah.
but the other thing I've noticed is if things would be any different with a relationship now, it's not that I'm disinterested, but I'm not as sexually driven now as I was back then. Well, shit, it's been so long I don't know if I'd remember how, but this is another story entirely. Uh,
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that's like falling off a bike. You'll remember.
Won't you? Hmm.
Sorry, couldn't help it.
Oh man, does anybody else have some input going on over here? Does somebody want to take a left turn at Albuquerque or something like that?
What one of this is a recent phenomenon. All this discussion
Yeah.
back when I went through the transition in the '70s, that period of American history where everybody was liberal,
Hmm.
and people like me got fired from jobs and evicted and thrown out of school and
Uh-huh.
all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
I've lived a stealth life throughout my transition, and it's only been in my time here on getting to know folks on YouTube that I've come out again, which is a whole different weird frickin' story.
Well, I
But
remember you're saying that it's essentially only weeks ago. Really? I mean, well, months maybe that you've actually
yeah,
had the courage to say anything.
yeah, it was a show that Mel the scientist was having, and I don't even remember. I've blanked out on it now. Things occurred, and I just felt compelled to say something, and my point required me to come out. But anyways,
Hmm.
Yeah.
this whole thing about gender choices and stuff just didn't exist until the last number of years, until the concept of binary, non-binary, and all that stuff started showing up, and people wanted to be called trans who have no desire, interest, or even in some cases awareness of gender surgery and that sort of thing. And then the conflict of everybody. Well, are you trans? Are you not trans? What's this? Oh no, you're transphobic if you don't agree with me, and all this bullshit.
Yeah.
Um, so it's really been kind of difficult for an old timer who thought they had things squared away in their mind through all this expensive therapy that one has as they transition, and it's just
Mhm.
been very, very weird to have to change your awareness of terminology and other people's spaces and stuff like this. I think all those other spaces and things are valid. I don't necessarily agree with the terminology and how people seem to think. Someone like me, as a post-op person, is the same as somebody who has no desire to ever go through transition surgery. I
Mhm.
think that's way fucked up. There's clearly a difference in those types of
Oh,
folks.
absolutely.
Um,
Oh yeah.
but it's just, I guess my point is, I'm just saying that this is difficult.
Yeah.
This is hard to think about for everybody, and I'll bet the chat agrees.
I think
Well,
what they're getting at is there is a difference between those two, you know, experiences, but I think they're saying, well, they're still trans. I think that's kind of where they're getting at.
What kind of trans is the question? Trans is a prefix.
I don't know.
You go back to Roman or Latin ideology, and trans means to cross.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so, okay, fine, you're crossing. What are you crossing? Are you crossing your gender? Are you crossing your genitals? Are you crossing societal norms. Well, which is it? And so I I don't know how you can take a label like transphobic, which is just a bad label, um, and apply it to everybody who has a disagreement. I mean, I've seen people with opposing viewpoints both been called transphobic. And
Yeah, I've seen
Yeah,
that
okay.
too.
this is
That's
this
not
is this
always
is a
fun. Yeah.
gigantic lack of language maturation. We have not defined things well enough for ourselves. We're in semantics hell right now
Oh
as a
yeah,
community, I think.
yeah.
Well,
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
I mean, something I've mentioned before on previous shows is that, I mean, I think we all have that one friend who, every time the media starts making a big deal out of a any kind of odd condition, they have it. You know, you've got that one friend who's like trans, who has Asperger's, who has this and that and the other thing. And it's like, you can't possibly have all those things. You just
Yep.
listed like 9 different syndromes of one flavor or another, and you say you're all of them. I'm sorry, I don't buy it. So I suspect that there are some people who are saying they're trans because it's trendy.
I'm pretty sure there
I
are, really, and I'm going to be hated, and people are going to throw shit at me for saying it. But yeah, I tend to agree.
Yeah,
as
and
some
you know, it also probably doesn't help a lot of the like anti-trans sentiment that for the longest time in the media, the image of a trans woman, because trans men were not even a thing people talk about,
Right?
um, was basically indistinguishable from a drag queen.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
To
I
some degree, yeah.
I'm
I
not
mean, some
one
people might
to
not be
try.
this special.
I'm sorry.
Sorry.
I'm not one to try to determine whether or not somebody is saying they are something because it is trendy. Um, and it's mostly because I have had my identity questioned so much.
Mm.
Just the 2 or 3 labels that I have been completely questioned. And there is so much policing out there in the LGBTQ community that
Yeah.
whether that I just tried not to even jump into that idea. And that may be being overly cautious on my part, but I hate, unless I 100% know the person inside and out and I know that they are faking stuff. I don't even bother with that thought. I try to shove that thought to the back of my brain because too many people are questioned on their identity.
You know,
And I don't like, and I know why it's important for specific communities to say, okay, are people hopping on board just to hop on board? But I have a tendency as an ace and a lot of other aces to kind of try to avoid that because we have purity tests. We've had purity tests before of, are you really ace? And that has caused a lot of harm to a lot of people who genuinely were ace.
something
Yeah.
interesting
So
in the
it's
side
hard
I
chat
for
mean,
here. Miss Sassy comes up with a really interesting question, and I find it interesting because I've actually had some experience with this. She asks, what if the person is trans themselves, but for some reason doesn't want to date another trans person? Does that make them transphobic? In the situations that I've seen, that I've actually been involved in, I've been turned down more than once because I wasn't a real woman. And this is turned down by a trans woman, by the way. I'm going to say, yeah, absolutely, because the reason they're not wanting to date that trans woman is they're not real. And, they make an exception for themselves. They're fine. But the rest of us can go, and
Oh,
no,
Diana,
no.
Diana, I,
Hmm.
I agree with what you're saying on in the big picture, but in your particular situation, because of your medical and financial issues, you have been able to have bottom surgery. I know that's something you'd like to do.
Oh, hell yeah. Oh, yeah.
So, was that person reacting to your current state, or just the fact that you're flat out trans?
It was flat out that I was trans because, as I described before, and they didn't. I can't remember if they used the word or not. They may have. They may not have. I wasn't a real woman. I wasn't born that way, and I didn't develop that way. And they wanted a real woman, a natal woman, that whole bit. And it's like,
Well, and I think part of the problem as well, or if it's not specifically this, but just still a problem in general, is the terminology we use. Because for the longest time, it was easy, male and female and man and woman are exactly the same, and gender and sex are exactly the same. And it's really easy to think of the world in that way, no matter the fact that the world isn't that easy, like it or lump it. But some people are clinging as hard as they can to the easy answers. And it's no surprise to me that most of them are religious as well. But
yeah.
I mean the fact that we cannot say man and woman or male or female and make that a like an explicit distinction is hampering the discussion. It's hamstringing it in many ways.
Oh, I'm with
See,
you.
this is where I'd like to step in and say there can be a distinction. The problem is that we've attributed gender to what the sexual orientation or the sex of that person is. So we've taken male and female and then said, well, man or woman. But the thing is, you've got male or female in terms of your born genitalia. That's what they identify you as. But as you grow up, girl, boy, man, woman, that is a different identity for people. So you might be male or female biologically, but you don't have to adhere to the cultural man or woman, constructs that have been established.
That's pretty much what I just said, actually.
I guess you could take that as a part of assent, then, can't you?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the thing is that, and I believe most of us have. I know that Kate didn't, but how many of us had like at least somewhat of a Christian background where they want everything in black and white, the entire world in black and white? And that is part of the problem. We've been taught that everything is black and white, it's on the binary, that's how it is. And then you have people that go, no, we're humans, we're way more complex than that, the world is way more complex than that.
Exactly.
And trying to get the language to fit, when you're talking about groups of people, you're going to have your perceptions also play into that. Like my perception of what asexuality means for me is going to be completely different from my male friend who is in India. He's going to have a slightly different perception of what asexual means, and trying to communicate that is part of the problem. Is that yes, we're both asexual, we're both on the ace spectrum, but it has a slightly different meaning. And that's where a lot of these clashes, I think, are coming in.
And there's some languages that have specifically gendered ways of speaking. So when you address someone, you speak in verbatim that is either male or female. There is no in between or neutral. I was speaking to a trans Polish woman who wanted to transition but couldn't because of her situation. But she said a lot of it was still very difficult to tell society, about the non-binary spectrum because of how binary the speaking is.
Okay, yeah. I think that most of the European-based languages are like that. I mean, even
Yeah, I mean,
English is gendered to some extent.
I usually go off on how much I hate the Romance languages because of the gendered nouns, and it's not usually like a physical person gender thing. It's just because the like various pronouns and articles and all of that stuff gets really messy, and it seems so freaking random, and there's no point to it whatsoever. It doesn't aid the language in any way. But yeah, I can totally see how it would get in the way of talking to people in the appropriate gender. I mean, hate the pronoun game that we're playing these days simply because it's a minefield. You don't know who you're going to piss off if you get it wrong. And
Mm-hmm.
then there's all the various alternative words, you know, like I've heard of people who want to be called Jay or whatever. And I'm like, look,
Event.
I want to call you what you want to be called. I really do. But I don't know what it is intuitively. And I'm going to
Yeah.
have to take a stab at it the first time if you don't tell me. And if I get it wrong, it's not my goddamn fault.
Right.
You know?
Well,
Yeah.
and it
What?
takes a
Like I
while to learn that too, right? I
yeah.
mean, you already grew up learning all this other stuff, and then it's like they're throwing this at you, like, well, how am I supposed to know about that without really understanding it first, right?
Well,
Yeah.
and then even
One
if
of the
you do
one.
understand it, though, there's, like I said, there's all those, like, I don't know if they're completely made up or if they're borrowed from other languages or whatever, but there's like gender neutral pronouns now.
Yep.
And a lot, they seem to change with the tide. And I don't know who wants to be called what anymore, or even if I know all the real words that they prefer. And I mean, I want to work with you, but only if we both cooperate and you tell me what you prefer, because then I'll use it.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
I don't
I,
know it automatically, damn it.
I'm a
Right.
Yeah.
writer, and words have always been something I've been interested in. And one of the wonderful things about our language here in America is that our English is very much an active language. It is changing. It is
Mm-hmm.
growing every day. Um, what we're going through right now is part of what's going to change the language. As we discuss these things, as we begin to understand these subtle nuances and realize that this type of person with this type of attitude is different than the next person down the line, and this is how, as we create these definitions, um, we then can create words that fit those definitions. This is how our language grows. Um,
Right.
and I think what we're feeling right now is the fact that we're in flux, that we are in a period of uh, expanding the language, and that it's not so much this horrible, terrible thing that we're going through, but part of our natural evolution of people who speak this language. And actually, as we find these new terms or create these new terms, the rest of the world will fall in line with it because English is such a dominant language on the planet.
Well, don't
Um,
even get me started on that shit because I'm not sure just how relevant the United States is going to be anymore. And England's kind of small. So I don't know how long that's going to last.
Yeah, I'm starting to
Mm-hmm.
wonder if you may have something like Chinese become the dominant language within 100 years.
That's
well, that may
You
be.
know, I miss the days in the 80s when everyone thought the Japanese were going to take over because I love their language. And, you know, if that whole sort of like technology apocalypse where the Japanese are now dominant ever happened, I think
right.
that would be kind of neat.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but on a little bit of an expansion of Kate's point, I think that patience on all sides can and I understand we've all got our bad days because there are days where I'm snippy as hell and I blow up and I don't mean to, but
Mm-hmm.
like Kate said, you can't intuitively know. Even if you know the person inside and out, you can't intuitively know until you say something. And I think that's one of the things that some of the more patient people who are trying to enact change, why some people are saying, hey, could the police also start introducing their pronouns just so that, maybe when we introduce ourselves, we just automatically do that so that everybody knows. We don't have to guess, and you know we've I know what to call you, what your name is, what your pronouns are, before make a mistake and misgender you.
Mm-hmm. And
One thing that I've noticed, and there have been some bitter fights about this on the internet, I've noticed,
yeah.
is the word dude and whether or not it's gender neutral. because I've definitely seen it used in gender neutral ways and I support that. But another thing I've noticed is whenever someone says, like, they're talking about trans panic, or someone they met at the club and then they got home and discovered they're like pre-op trans or whatever, inevitably they will say, oh, that was a dude, not man, not guy, not anything else. Oh, I got home and it turns out she was a dude every time. And that is one of the most fraught words these days, because I know a lot of folks where it doesn't matter male, female, they'll be like, hey, dude, how's it going? So I don't know anymore with that one.
I wonder if that's a
I
regional thing.
No, I think it's a matter of context because certain words can have double meanings too. A lot of words can have double meanings. And yeah, like dude can be used in a neutral term. I've heard it used in a term like hey buddy, and it's like hey dude. And there are some people that will use it in a gendered context, but it is like one of those words with like other meanings now, and we don't know where it fits because people are using it in different ways, right? Like you said.
I don't like dude being used that way, and I'll explain why. The word guys used to have that same connotation, that guys was strictly a male
Yeah.
term, and it has now morphed into a gender neutral term, which I think is fine.
Oh, guy has?
What? Oh yeah, yeah.
Oh, okay.
In fact, I'm surprised at the word dude being used that way. It's much more recent. I have not used it myself. I never will. Or I shouldn't say never. I probably wouldn't at this point use it that way.
There are
But what
some.
bugs me about it is that why are we always co-opting all these male gendered words and adapting them to mean everybody? It's like how would the guys feel if gals became the term for everybody as a gender neutral? They wouldn't like it. They wouldn't use it.
No, well, there's actually a reason for that, and it's because over time, for non-binary people, they have used the he, him, or male pronouns because that was considered a gender neutral way of saying things. They didn't have other terms. Like right now, I'm thinking, well, there's no other term my mother could call me but daughter, right? Or there's also son. Like, what would she call me? And personally, I don't care. But like, if you were to talk to somebody who does care about the gender neutral pronouns, I mean, what are you going to call your son or daughter, right?
I know some people have their own ideas.
I mean,
It's true.
if I had a child, which I never will, thank you very much indeed. A cat is enough
Me neither.
responsibility.
I got mine
But
here.
if and they were gender queer in some way or another, I'd just say, here's my kid.
Yeah.
That's all. Here's my kid. Here's my child. Here's my progeny. There are ways to refer to one's offspring that is entirely devoid of gender. And that, I mean, instead of like guys or dudes or anything, I've started saying folks a lot.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
I
yeah,
do
yeah,
that
yeah.
too.
Yeah,
Frequently.
I say folks a lot.
I've switched guys to y'all, and everybody who's not from the South gets mad at me for using it. But I'm like, look, listen, okay, y'all, listen, y'all. There's nothing wrong with y'all. You cannot come up with any reasons other than you're annoyed by it. I will give that up over my dead body. Okay.
Well, now remember, y'all is singular. All y'all is plural.
I don't know. I mean, I guess there's other ways to, hey, how are you fuckers doing? That kind of thing.
There you go. There you go. Or the
In the chat, Sewer Tape brings up a very good point I'd like to just touch on for a moment. He said he or she, who I don't know you, Sewer Tape, sorry. Drill sergeants use ladies all the time when addressing a room full of men.
There's a
Yes,
reason
they do.
for that.
And they do that as
Yeah.
a put down, as a negative.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and that pisses me off to no end.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know why pussy is used to describe someone who's like cowardly or wimpy. Because let's face it, those things can take a pounding and keep on going.
A literal pounding.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is true. It's just because of culture, like devaluing women. Like it's the whole feminist versus patriarchy thing. I mean, not just that, but you know what I mean. Just like
Well, I
this whole cultural issue between genders and sexes and everything.
Well, I mean, I do not. I mean, categorically do not understand those women who want to be housewives and declare that they are submissive to their husbands and all that stuff. I mean, the whole biblical model of what
Some
it means
people
to
are
be a
into
woman,
Yeah.
that.
and some of them are freaking proud of it. And I
Some
do
of them are
not
into that.
understand.
Oh
I
yeah, the
wonder.
religious ones.
I wonder how many of them would have been proud of it had they not been pounded into submission. I mean, how many would voluntarily
Not
take
many,
that?
but there are some
There
who
are some
still,
who
that is their
would, yes.
personality.
Yeah.
There
Yeah.
are some who that is their personality. I've known um, a couple of them who really do like the whole 50s housewife thing, and they truly do love it and they're happy in it. But I can guarantee you that number would be really, really small if we weren't trained to think that way from birth.
You know, the unfortunate thing is that some years ago, so many of the trans people I knew wanted that whole 50s housewife thing, or said they did. And it impressed me just the way they did it, the way they talked about it, that they were fetishizing
Yeah.
that 50s
That
housewife thing. And it really, really put a bad taste in my mouth.
I think a
Yeah.
lot of transgender folks fetishize, idolize, idealize women, and of course, I'm talking about male to female transgender folks here. I know that I certainly did in my early days. It was something my therapist called me on. You know, he said that you really, you should flat out said, you idealize women. You better take a much better look at how you define womanhood and what you're seeking in life. Because I was one of those who dreamed of being taken care of the big beautiful wedding with the lovely gown and the flowers. And anyways, I matured from that position, and I would not give up the career that I had for anything, as it ended up. But I think as a group, we need to look at ourselves that way and realize that, yeah, idealizing and fetishizing what this image of femininity, or for the other side, masculinity, is all about. It's not what you think in your dreams.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think from an early age, I realized that being taken care of came at too high a price.
Hmm.
you have to also be able to do your part in the relationship, not just have somebody else do it all. And I get you on the whole being taken care of in that, because when I was watching like Disney movies, and I know people go through this a lot, I was romanticizing the whole dominant and submissive part between Beauty and the Beast. And
Mm.
it was a kind of like a mentality I got into. Okay, I'm female. I would like that. But when you think about it more deeply, a relationship like that just wouldn't last.
Yeah, definite. Let's see if we've got anything. Okay, we're talking about dude in the side chat, so that's
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Um, Something else that I wanted to bring up too was like it's really easy to idolize certain aspects when you're taught that, okay, when you're female, this is what you should want.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that not and I think that that's kind of a trap that a lot of people fall into, is it's like, all right, well, this is what male is, this is what female is. If you don't fit this checklist of stereotypes, then you're not really either. And I think it hits everybody, but it hits trans people hardest. Because I grew up in a religion where
I thought that was where
And
you were coming from. Yeah, okay.
yeah, I
Yeah.
grew up in a religion where I was told that it was my job to grow up, get married, be the great submissive Mormon housewife, and have children. And I honestly fantasized about that a lot as a teenager, but that didn't match up with my personality or my reality.
Right. I don't think it matches up with a lot of people. It's just like kind of forced on you when you're a kid. And then
Yeah.
even
All I can say about that is that I would pity the poor kid that had me as a parent.
I would I would pity the poor kid who had me as a parent. Like
I
I
my
would
think
pity
I
sister's
would
lucky
be
she's an adult.
I think I would be a good parent. The problem is I just don't want to raise a kid. I'm not inclined to be nurturing or anything like that.
Yeah.
Like that's the whole thing with the non-binary thing. I don't fit in that category of woman that they
I would
define.
I would make a very good aunt. I would make a terrible mother.
Oh,
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, she's a cute kid and she's really happy and I like her, but like me
Yeah.
having a kid, no thanks.
I sometimes wonder if I could
Just
be a
like
mentor, but other than that,
I mean, I
Yeah,
have friends with kids, and it's actually really fun to hang out with them and their kids. But I don't have
yeah,
to have any of the responsibility of like finding schools and feeding them and all the various like medical maintenance you have to do with a kid. I don't want any of that. Like I say, a cat is enough responsibility. I don't even want a dog because I'd have to walk the fucking thing, right?
yeah.
But hanging out like babies have a tendency to fall asleep on me. Like if a crying baby, I pick the little kid up. I for some reason instinctively know what to do to make the kid shut up and go to sleep, right? But then I get to give the kid back, and everything's okay again.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I
So
get that anxiety too when I'm holding a baby. It's
oh
like
man,
you.
it's getting my tubes tied was the best decision I ever made in a life full of bad decisions. I will say that. Because
Uh,
in my perspective, it takes something very, 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 very special to be a parent. I don't have it.
yeah.
I know it. Unlike a couple people I
Yeah.
could name, and I don't want to make I didn't want to make the mistake they made, and fuck up a couple of kids. Um, so it's just the way that went.
And early in my days, I researched and looked and begged and prayed in a non-religious way um, for somebody to figure out how to do uterine transplants or to how to grow a uterus for me. I wanted to have kids so bad. It's my biggest regret in life is not having children.
They're doing
I
that
don't know that
though.
I would be very good. Yeah, they are now. They are now.
Yeah.
But I'm
Oh,
65. My days are over.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah,
um,
I have a bit of a difference of opinion with a friend of mine. Two of his kids are in their 40s, and two are it's like single digits, and it's like, Al, you do understand that when Vesper graduates high school, you'll be well into your 70s. Well, my wife is young, and it's Al, no. It just doesn't work that way.
I think it's more that, well, you can still be with them up until they're like 20 or something. But like, I like how long you're going to live, right?
Yeah, tell me about that one.
But you can still
Um,
raise them enough to get out of the house and live on their own. You just kind of have to be prepared for all that.
there is, I will say, I mean, even with a 10-year difference between your so called parents and the other kid's parents, it does
Hmm.
show at times. Um,
Oh,
the
sure.
slimy bastards brought me home from the baby store when they were 33, whereas the other kids, their parents were in their early 20s when the first kid was born.
Hmm.
And the difference showed, definitely.
Oh,
Um,
of course. Yeah.
well, I mean, I remember what I was like in my 20s, and the idea that someone like that would have a child, would be responsible for a child. I would not trust a kid with just about any 20-year-old, honestly.
Yeah, and okay, I don't want to sound horrible, but it's going to sound horrible, I know. In the neighborhood I live in, 20 is rather old to have your first kid. And when
Yeah,
I'm thinking
it
of
is for
14-year-olds raising
Mormons.
kids, it's like, no, oh my word, how is this allowed in any rational universe?
Well, let's remember,
Oh, they do have
300
childcare.
years ago, that was not an unusual age to have a child.
But the societies are different. They're
I,
very,
I
very
understand,
different.
Fall
but
past that.
the human, the creature,
The creature is the same, yes.
is theoretically capable of doing that, and did for thousands of years.
Yeah. And it's a lot of the fault lies with the present society that has extended childhood and well into the 20s. Let's face it.
30s.
Oh yeah, no,
Okay.
it's getting older. I'd say 25 now.
And that's another whole pressure in this is, without getting into the wool pours me melodrama of it all. I have not had a date in 40 years. Okay, and
Well, you
at
got
this
me
point,
beat.
as I realize that my options are larger, and I've explored other possibilities. I've met dozens and dozens of trans women on Twitter who are just so completely attractive to me, and I've developed at least a half a dozen crushes in the last week alone.
Oh, that's good.
They're all in their 20s.
Oh yeah.
And
Nothing's gonna
yeah,
happen there.
there
Oh
can
yeah,
be
well,
a bit
that's
of a
right.
problem. I'm
You know, and so age becomes a big issue in this as well. I mean, people um, see a lot of November, March weddings and stuff, but it's still not that common. I think it's much less common than, say, interracial marriage or any other odd mixings that we may think about. Um, Age is still a big issue, a taboo almost, for most folks.
well.
So,
Yeah.
I've been on both sides of an age gap. My official wife was 15 years older than I, and then my latest ex was 13 years younger. I'm a little easier when it comes to age gaps, and a lot of people are, but I still cannot see myself in a relationship with somebody, say, 22 years old or 82 years old. It's,
But with the
I don't know
gender
that I could do
argument,
that. Say again?
with the gender argument, you could even say that age might not even be a factor. My boyfriend was 13 years older than me. And I thought, well, I mean, I could still fall in love with somebody who's maybe in their 70s. I don't think it'd even matter. Because for me, it wouldn't be about the sex. But for some people, they would think the other way, right? Like automatically, like, ooh, she's dating somebody older, right?
Mm-hmm. And it's interesting when you come to it where it's always been the case that the older man, younger woman was more accepted than the older woman, younger man.
I've seen the reverse
I
too,
got
but I
some.
get you.
Say again.
I've seen the reverse too, but I get you there.
Yeah.
Like society expects the other way.
I mean, I got some looks.
What was her name? Was it Mary Kay Letourneau and that boyfriend of hers who was like a high school student of hers?
no, he was even younger. He was like 14
Yeah,
when they
no,
were having their
that
thing.
was definitely something wrong there.
Yeah, that's
That's like not even what we were talking about. That's like going
Yeah,
into
that's
pedophilia
another
area.
class of stuff altogether. Yeah.
Yeah.
But boy, this is really interesting how we've strayed from the topic, but still kept it interesting. And I think that's a really, really good thing there. We've got food for many, many, many future discussions here. Now, I am noticing that we're getting close to 90 minutes. And
wow.
yeah, I mean,
That's
that's
terrific.
one of the things that indicates to me that this was a very, very interesting discussion. Now, I'm going to put the question. Does anybody mind going to an after show for a while anyway? Because I do
I
like to.
actually
Say
Oh,
it.
sorry.
Go.
I actually have to go clean up a mess because what happened earlier, while I was missing, the laundry machine just leaked all over the floor. So,
Oops.
Oh no,
yeah,
Oops.
like I'm
that's
probably
never
gonna have to
good.
do some pickup and that still. So I want to make sure everything's all clean. We mopped up most of the water, but it's still like I need to check it to be sure.
You can
Then
always
I
come in
got some
later.
bags
Yeah, I
filled with.
mean, come on by later because what I'm going to do here is,
Okay.
while we're talking, I haven't fired any of this up yet, so I'm going to grab. There we go. Let's see if we can do this. I think I can do this. Can I do this? I hope I can do
Yeah,
this.
I'm in for an after show. I have nothing to do until my stream, so
I'm good
Oh,
for an
look,
after
we got a
show. I
couple
have
people in the after
nothing to
show
do till I
already.
die.
So
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
Jen, you're
I'll
there, and NANA is already there. Let me grab the.
Nana, baby.
Yay! It's amazing when I come to think of it how many people who are in the audience now and have migrated to other channels that I've frequented came from movie night. And I think that's a testament to how good movie night was. That people actually liked us and stuck around and the other stuff we did. And into the side chat has gone a link. That link, my dear friends, is to an after show. And if anybody knows me well at all, they know that my after shows can go and go and go. But I'm going to try to keep it a little short this time.
So what you're saying is they're the Energizer Bunny of after
Yes,
show.
absolutely. You have to. Well, I tell you, it was really funny that Strike noticed one of the after shows that I had run. It was one of those 7-hour after shows, and he told me later on that day, what are you doing? You're trying to rival movie night, because at movie night we used to go 7 or 8 hours,
Uh,
and there I was going. I don't know, Maya. You say
Hi,
I am.
Maya.
You say I am so loved. I have but one word with which to respond. Why? I'll leave it at
I don't know.
that.
I suppose if I was going to choose one word like that, it would be.
How did you
That's just
spell
me.
that, hon?
I think it's PBSTSPBBSPP. Yeah.
I always spelled
oh
it
gosh.
PHHHHHHHBBBBBBBBBT.
It's typically spelled in comics and things as PBLTTTTTTTTTTTTT.
Oh my, oh my! But do we
Peanut
want to
butter jelly.
go? Do we want to go around the horn and let everybody know how cool you are and what you do? Let's see. Why don't we start with? Why don't we start with the new person, Dottie? How cool are you and what do you do?
I'm a programmer, application developer in my job, and I mostly talk about things, politics, atheism. I have a Twitter account that anybody can follow. My account
What would that be?
handle is realist.nerd.
Say again, realist daughter.
Realist.nerd.
Oh, realist.nerd. There we go. There we go. I mean, I know what it is because I've seen it before, but I just forgot.
Yeah,
Um,
no, it's okay.
yeah, I've got the memory of an elephant. What's an elephant got to remember? Other than that, do you have anything coming up that you're doing any special things with?
I don't do YouTube yet, just
Okay.
because I have some health and other things to deal with. Maybe I
Okay.
will someday.
Sounds reasonable. What if somebody wants to follow you on Twitter? Yeah, just
Yeah,
let's see,
I just
realist
talk
nerd.
about
Yeah.
things. my opinions, whatever.
Sounds like fun. Tria, how about you?
Hey y'all, Triatiel, and I talk about asexuality and ex-Mormonism on my YouTube channel. This month is extremely busy. Next, sometime around the 15th, they haven't decided the exact date yet. I am doing a stream called Hasat Diga Ibawai, um, which is going to be celebrating my 1 year anniversary of telling the Mormon Church to officially fuck off.
Hey!
Yay.
Yeah. Um, and then after that is Ace Awareness Week, the 20th through the 26th. On Monday of that week, I have a stream with 3 to 4 kinky aces to talk about what it's like being kinky and ace.
Well, that's interesting.
Because that's a
Yeah.
subject that really fascinates me. Um, Luciano has already agreed. I have a friend who might be there. An Alhana. Um, I don't remember if she goes by Alhana on her Twitter or not, but Alhana has agreed to be there. And then I will be there as the token sex repulsed ace.
Okay. And thank you, Dave,
So
for
it's very,
throwing that.
very interesting.
Yep.
And then that Thursday night, I'm trying to gather as many aces who will agree to just talk about different aspects of being on the asexual umbrella, because we're all different variations of sex repulsed to sex positive, and there's also intersectionality with what it's like to be trans and ace, or what it's like to be Hispanic and ace. So I'm hoping those streams to go really well. I am also going to fit in somewhere, sometime, a stream on the on asexuality having been mistreated in the medical field as hyposexuality disorder. And I'm not sure if I'm going to fit that into Ace Week or not, but that will come out sometime this month. So
Oh,
I have a lot
yay.
going on.
Yeah, you've got a full plate coming.
Yeah.
I will have
So
to follow you then. That sounds
thanks.
juicy.
Try. Can I?
Yeah.
Can I make a comment?
Absolutely. I was just going to point at you, Jen.
Back in the 50s, one of the terms that came out of the Kinsey studies and stuff was obligatory homosexuality, and it was defined as a situation a person finds himself. The illustration that was always given was a male in prison, that there's still sexual encounters, but they're not really homosexual because it's obligatory, and that the only way they're going to have sex is with other men. So is there such a thing as obligatory asexuality?
I don't think we would define it that way, because ours is asexuality is based on your feelings. It's based on whether or not you feel the attraction or not. It's not about what your actions are, because if we went by actions, I would have been a heterosexual, just because I tried so hard to be sexual for over a decade.
Okay, then.
And
Yeah.
that caused me a lot of harm and pain. So I don't think you can be obligatory asexual, but if you find that you're not really feeling sexual attraction to a lot of people, it's something that you might want to consider.
Oh, well, that's not an issue with me.
Yeah. No, it's about the attractions, not the action, because like you said, they're still the men in prison are still straight. It's just they have sexual desires and they have to release them somehow, and so that's what winds up happening, because that's the environment that they're in. But it doesn't change whether or not they're actually sexually attracted to them. They're just acting on their impulses and their desires.
And
Okay. I just thought I'd bring it up.
Jen, while you're at it, tell us how cool you are and what you do.
Well, I'm disappointed, Diana. You lied. I didn't get a date.
Oh.
I'm just not trustworthy. You know, what can I tell you?
I've been on Twitter a lot lately. My handle there is Jen Morgan. I don't know what to say. I'm not doing YouTube because I don't have the hardware to do it, but I would if I did. So I'm just satisfied at this point being a guest on a number of panels, varying in topics. I try not to talk about stuff I don't know, but not always.
Okay, then.
And it's just delightful to be here and be able to contribute and hopefully bring up ideas, concepts that folks are able to think about and maybe spread out to the world.
Glad to have you,
I'm-
sweetness. Seriously.
I'm very flattered by having the folks in the chat be willing to listen to things that I say and not be too nasty to me. You can be nasty to me. I can take it.
Aw.
But it's good. I enjoy this. Let's do it some more.
A quick answer to Greg Hartwick over in the side chat, who asks how old was I when I transitioned. I was 52. I transitioned late.
Really, that late? Holy
Yeah.
cow.
I had to put it on hold for a long time, but it finally got to the point where I had to say, look, if I don't do this, it's going to kill me. And that was back in 2009. But okay, then we have, last but not least, the one, the only, the brilliant, the beautiful Kate Farr, Bionic Dance. What you up to?
Well, right now I've for the last week had 2 computers chewing on a new animated background for my YouTube videos, which is why I haven't put out any content for a while. But I'm looking at the screen right now. It's on frame 7,136 of 7,200. So we're getting really close to the end.
Nice.
I think it's going to look really, really cool. And it was sort of a proof of concept for that larger sci-fi program, that sci-fi video that I've been talking about. And I have a lot more confidence in the potential success of that based on what this animation looks like now. So
That's a good
I'll
thing.
probably make a video in the next day or 3 using it.
Yay.
And so that'll be cool. For those of you who don't know, I make videos debunking the unholy crap out of religion.
And she does a very, very good job of it, by the way.
Yeah, so that's basically what I do and what's coming up. And how cool am I? I'm about as cool as a turd that's halfway out. But still, apparently people think otherwise. So, hey.
Oh, yeah, definitely. There are people who think differently. I wouldn't know any of them, but.
I love your channel. I love your channel.
And I want to thank every one of you for being on panel. And I'll just put in here, because it's about time I start doing the shameless plugging. I am the Lavender Lady. I am trying to do a few more things. Coffee with Lavender has been my mainstay for the last year or so. I'm thinking of doing a little bit of expanding as far as more live streams are going. I do want to do scripted videos. I keep promising, and I know I haven't done it yet, but we're going to get there. And I am going to try, with everything I have, Kate, to follow your advice and not overthink this and not over-research it. And I know it's not easy, but we'll give it a shot, because I respect your opinion. That's what I said on the way in.
That's only because I'm always right.
Oh, right. You got that point right over there. And I will say, if you guys like what I'm doing, on the off chance that you like what I'm doing, I hope you don't mind just spreading the word a little bit and letting other people know. And keep in mind that I do have a Patreon, and if you guys feel that I'm good enough for $1 or $2, and you do have the $1 or $2 in the first place, that would be very, very much appreciated. I mean, I've got to kind of watch that I don't make too much money, but a little bit helps to defray the bills, let's face it. And oh my God, Kate, am I putting you to sleep?
No, it's just that I got like 2 minutes of sleep last night, and I haven't had breakfast or coffee yet. So if I yawn, it's not commentary. I'm just actually that tired.
Oh
These
my.
California chicks, I
That's
tell
what
you.
I figured. I mean, a lot of us are sleep deprived here, I think.
And then I know, I get the California chicks out of bed at an ungodly hour. I know this, but I will see what I can do about
No, not you. I was awakened by a
that.
very hungry cat.
Meow,
No.
meow, 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 meow. Food, 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 food. And I am going to say thank you, everyone who is here, and everyone who is not here. And I really appreciate your coming by. And I noticed in the numbers below the watch window there, we actually got up to 20 people at one time, and that's amazing. I'm very appreciative of that. It amazes me that so many of you actually want to hear what I have to say. It must mean something. So thank you very much for that. And we're on our way to the after show. Those of us who are going to end up there, we're going to find out who. And with that, thanks a lot, troops. See you on the other side.
Bye.